Something catastrophic happened 3,600 years ago in the Aegean Sea. An explosion so powerful it was possibly heard 3,000 kilometers away. A volcano that destroyed 60 cubic kilometers of rock and generated tsunamis up to 150 meters high. The entire Minoan civilization of Crete vanished in decades. But why did nobody know about this until 1967? Why did 40 years of excavations at Akrotiri reveal only 2 hectares of a 20-hectare city? Why were no human remains found? And why is the exact date still debated by scientists from 15 countries? The answer lies in an island called Santorini. Welcome to the documentary that will prove, with scientific, archaeological, and historical evidence, what happened in 1646 BC. What we're about to witness is not just a volcanic eruption. This is a mega disaster of VEI 7 magnitude, the maximum possible for a historical eruption. 200,000 Hiroshima bombs, 60 cubic kilometers of rock ejected, a 36-kilometer eruption column piercing the stratosphere, tsunamis from 35 to 150 meters, a 20-hectare city perfectly preserved under 60 meters of ash. This is the story of the greatest geological megadisaster of the ancient world, and you've never heard of it. Over the next parts of this documentary, we will journey through 4 eruptive phases that lasted approximately 2 days. We will explore the perfectly preserved city of Akrotiri, the Pompeii of the Aegean. We will uncover the tsunami deposits that prove waves reached 150 meters. We will examine the ice cores from Greenland, the tree rings from Ireland and Sweden, and the volcanic ash layers found from Turkey to Egypt. We will discover how this single eruption connected China, Egypt, Greece, and the entire Eastern Mediterranean in a climate catastrophe of planetary scale. The bamboo annals in China recorded yellow mist, frost in July, and famine. The storm Stele of Ahmose I in Egypt described catastrophic storms. And in the Aegean, the island of Thera exploded with the force of 200,000 nuclear bombs. These were not separate events. They were the same event. This documentary is based on evidence from archaeology, geology, multiple independent scientific datings, and ancient historical records that factually prove this VEI 7 mega disaster. After 3,600 years, Santorini continues to be studied as one of the greatest geological catastrophes in human history. The question remains, what if it happens again? Months before the final catastrophe, the volcano of Thera began showing signs of its destructive intention. The island of Santorini was not a peaceful place in those final months before 1646 BC. Seismic activity had been increasing for years. Large earthquakes shook the settlements, damaging buildings and reducing some structures to nothing more than rubble. The Minoan people, skilled builders who had constructed 3-story buildings with elaborate drainage systems and magnificent frescoes, now faced a threat they could not fight with architecture or art. Then came the first volcanic warning. A thin layer of preliminary ash fell across the island. Scientists analyzing the volcanic deposits today found that this first ash layer was remarkably thin and critically showed no visible erosion from winter rains before the next layer was deposited. This geological evidence tells us something crucial. The volcano gave the local population several months of warning. The ash was fresh, untouched by rain, meaning the eruption timeline was compressed. The people of Akrotiri understood what this meant. The city of Akrotiri, spanning 20 hectares, was one of the most important urban centers in the Aegean. It featured sophisticated multi-story buildings reaching 3 floors, walls adorned with magnificent frescoes depicting antelopes, boxing boys, blue monkeys, and flying fish. The city had an elaborate drainage system, storage rooms, workshops, grain mills on the ground floors, and residences on the upper levels. It was a port connecting copper from Cyprus to the trade routes between Cyprus and Crete. Merchants brought ivory, ostrich eggs, and wood from the Levant, Egypt, and Cyprus. Pigments like Egyptian blue, glaucophane, and jarosite traveled through Akrotiri's ports. But now, the ground trembled, the ash fell, and the people fled. Remarkably, no human remains were found in the archaeological site of Akrotiri. This absence tells us the most important story. The entire population evacuated before the main eruption. The preliminary volcanic activity of those months caused complete evacuation. When archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos began excavations in 1967, he discovered buildings perfectly preserved under 60 meters of white tephra, but empty. The city was a ghost town before the explosion. The tephra layer itself reveals 3 distinct bands, indicating different phases of the eruption. 60 meters of white tephra clearly covers the soil before the eruption, delineating the exact level of the land before the cataclysm. This geological marker exists in almost every archaeological site in the eastern Mediterranean. The volcanic ash from Santorini became a horizon marker that archaeologists use worldwide to date Bronze Age sites. But the warning was not just ash and earthquakes. The volcano was preparing something far more devastating. The magma chamber beneath Thera was filling, pressuring, building toward an explosion that would eject material at 250 million kilograms per second. The column would reach 36 kilometers into the stratosphere. The explosion would be heard across 3,000 kilometers, and the tsunamis would reach heights of up to 150 meters. The people of Akrotiri knew they had to leave. They took what they could carry. They abandoned their 3-story buildings, their magnificent frescoes, their elaborate drainage systems, their workshops, their storage rooms. They left behind the city that had been their home for generations, and they survived. But when they would return, perhaps days later, perhaps weeks, hoping to retrieve their possessions, the main eruption would have already begun. The city would be buried, the island would collapse, and the civilization they belonged to would begin its final decline. The warning months were salvation for the people of Akrotiri, but they were also the countdown to the greatest geological megadisaster of the ancient world. Then came the day. The year was 1646 BC, or perhaps 1627 BC, or maybe 1600 BC. Scientists from 15 countries still debate the exact date using radiocarbon dating, tree rings from Ireland and Sweden, and ice cores from Greenland. But the date does not matter. What matters is what happened when the volcano of Thera finally exploded. The eruption began with Phase 1, the Minoan A eruption. A Plinian eruption column rose 36 kilometers into the sky, piercing the stratosphere. Material was ejected at 250 million kilograms per second. The column of ash and pumice stretched higher than any mountain on Earth. The explosion was so powerful, it was possibly heard 3,000 kilometers away, across the entire Mediterranean, from Egypt to Turkey, from Greece to Italy. People thousands of kilometers away would have seen the sky darken, would have felt the atmosphere tremble, would have witnessed a black shadow rising from the Aegean Sea. The first phase deposited between 0.5 and 7 meters of pumice and ash across the island. The deposit was most intense on the eastern side of the island due to wind patterns. But this phase was not the most dangerous. There was no magma-water interaction yet, only magmatic gases. The buildings of Akrotiri were buried under meters of pumice, but the damage was limited. The city was entombed but not destroyed. Then came Phase 2, the Minoan B eruption. This was when the catastrophe became absolute. The first collapse of the volcanic caldera began. Water from the sea infiltrated the magma chamber through the vent. The contact between water and magma created violent explosions that pulverized the rock. The magma was fragmented into tiny particles and ejected as ash. Blocks of lithic rock, some measuring 1 to 2 meters in diameter, were thrown across the island. Pyroclastic flows moved at speeds between 15 and 50 meters per second. These were not normal lava flows. These were superheated clouds of ash, gas, and rock fragments moving faster than any hurricane, hotter than any furnace. Temperatures reached 400 degrees Celsius in some deposits. The buildings that survived Phase 1 were now completely destroyed. Structures were not buried, they were obliterated. The heat alone would have incinerated anything organic. The pressure alone would have crushed anything solid. But Phase 2 was not the final catastrophe. The caldera was collapsing, but not completely. The magma chamber was emptying, but the main explosion was still coming. Tsunamis were likely generated in this phase, but they were not the final waves. The greatest disaster was still building. Phase 3, the Minoan Sea eruption, brought the caldera collapse advanced. Pyroclastic flows spread across the entire island and the nearby marine surface. The deposits were chaotic, unorganized, measuring 40 meters thick near the caldera and 55 meters in southern Santorini. The heat remained at 400 degrees Celsius. Every remaining settlement was destroyed. Every structure was obliterated. The island was becoming uninhabitable. The air was filled with ash. The sea was filled with debris. The sky was filled with darkness. But Phase 4, the Minoan eruption, was the final catastrophe, the complete caldera collapse. This phase produced the main megatsunami. The entire central mass of the island sank into the emptied magma chamber. The circular island became a half-moon caldera. The explosion was so powerful that 60 cubic kilometers of rock were ejected. The volcano released energy equivalent to 200,000 Hiroshima bombs, 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa in 1883, 10 times more powerful than modern scientists had initially believed. The duration from the first explosions to the final caldera collapse was approximately 2 days. 2 days that destroyed an island. 2 days that generated tsunamis 35 to 150 meters high. 2 days that sent ash across the entire eastern Mediterranean. 2 days that changed the climate of the entire planet. The explosion was finished. The island was destroyed, but the consequences were beginning. The tsunamis were the second weapon of Santorini's explosion. When the caldera collapsed completely in Phase 4, the ocean rushed into the emptied volcanic chamber and then retreated with unimaginable force. The result was waves measuring between 35 and 150 meters in height. These were not normal tsunamis. These were megatsunamis that would have dwarfed the tallest buildings on Earth. The island of Crete was 110 kilometers from Santorini, not far enough to escape. The waves traveled across the Aegean Sea and struck the northern coast of Crete with devastating power. Modern geological field evidence from Pallaicastro proves that waves reached at least 9 meters high. But other studies estimate the waves reached 150 meters at their source, and even at 110 kilometers distance, they remained catastrophic. In the city of Ahmose, the tsunami waves battered buildings so violently that walls were knocked out of alignment. The force of the water was stronger than any earthquake, stronger than any hurricane. In Pallaicastro, 9-meter waves swept through coastal sites, destroying everything in their path. In Petrus, the city was destroyed not by the tsunami, but by the earthquake that preceded the eruption. But the tsunamis would have completed the devastation. The coastal areas of Crete were flooded. Minoan settlements along the shore were wiped away. The Minoan civilization depended on merchant ships and naval power to survive. Their economy was built on maritime trade. The tsunamis destroyed their ports, their ships, their coastal infrastructure. The economic damage was catastrophic. The political damage was worse. But the tsunamis did not stop at Crete. The island of Anafi, 27 kilometers to the east of Santorini, received ash layers 3 meters deep. Pumice was found on slopes 250 meters above sea level. The waves had reached that height. Islands within a radius of 50 to 60 kilometers were completely destroyed. The entire geography of the Aegean Sea was changed. Modern geological studies from 2015 to 2019 analyzed marine sediments and seismic data from oceanographic expeditions. They confirmed the volume of ejected material, 28 to 41 cubic kilometers of dense rock equivalent. They identified the 4 eruptive phases with specific volumes. They mapped the underwater deposits of the tsunami. The evidence is overwhelming. The tsunamis happened. They were measured. They were recorded in the geological record. The tsunami deposits have been found at Cesme Balararasa, where 4 wave landfalls occurred over a few days or weeks. The field evidence at Pallaicastro confirms waves of at least 9 meters. Geoarchaeological tsunami deposits have been confirmed worldwide. The science is clear, but the tsunamis were not the only consequence. The ash fell across the entire eastern Mediterranean. 5 millimeters of ash covered the soil of Crete. Not enough to kill all vegetation, but the tsunamis were enough to destroy the coastal economy. The earthquake that preceded the eruption had already damaged many Minoan sites. Some buildings were reduced to rubble. The tsunami completed the destruction. The Minoan civilization was not destroyed in a single day, but the eruption of Santorini was the beginning of their decline. The The economic difficulties were significant. The maritime empire was lost over time. The crisis provoked by the eruption allowed the Mycenaeans to conquer the Minoans easily. The conquest happened at the end of the late Minoan II period, not many years after the eruption, but the initial recovery was rapid. The period following the eruption is considered the zenith of Minoan culture. Many sites were reconstructed. Petras was rebuilt. Palikastro was rebuilt. New Minoan palaces were constructed at Zakros and Phaistos. Some sites declined. Galatas, Ahmose, lustral basins were filled in, puzzling cultural changes. The people of Crete survived, but their civilization was weakened. The island of Santorini was destroyed. The city of Akrotiri was buried. The tsunamis had swept across the Aegean, and the consequences were spreading across the entire planet. The explosion had changed the climate. The ash had blocked the sun. The world was cooling. And in China, in Egypt, in Greece, people were beginning to notice that something global had happened, something that connected all of them in a single catastrophe. The explosion of Santorini did not just destroy an island. It changed the climate of the entire planet. The ash that was ejected 36 kilometers into the stratosphere spread across the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, cooling the earth, and creating a volcanic winter that lasted for years. This was not a local disaster. This was a global catastrophe. In China, something extraordinary happened. The Bamboo Annals, ancient Chinese records, document the collapse of the Xia Dynasty and the rise of the Shang Dynasty around 1618 BC. The records describe yellow mist, blinding sun, 3 suns, frost in July, famine, and the withering of all 5 cereals. These were not separate events. They were the symptoms of a single global catastrophe. The yellow mist was volcanic ash. The blinding sun was the atmospheric haze. The 3 suns were optical phenomena caused by ash particles. The frost in July was the volcanic winter. The famine was the crop failure. The withering of the cereals was the agricultural collapse. The evidence exists in tree rings from across the world. In 1628 BC, oak trees in Ireland showed growth depression. Pine trees in Sweden showed the same depression. Fir trees in California recorded the event. In 1627 BC, frost rings appeared in Swedish pines and Irish oaks. The minimum growth years were 1654, 1649, 1619, 1597, 1546, and 1524 BC. Increasing levels of sulfur, calcium, and rare earth elements appeared in Mediterranean tree rings between 1681 and 1673 BC. The climate data is overwhelming. The eruption happened, the cooling happened, the famine happened. In Egypt, the storm Stele of Ahmose I described catastrophic storms that devastated most of the country. The Stele attributes these storms to short-term climate changes caused by the eruption of Thera. Some scholars argue the Stele is metaphorical, describing the war against the Hyksos and the chaos over which the pharaoh imposed order. But Egypt is far from zones of important seismic activity. It could not have been significantly affected by an Aegean earthquake. The storms were real. The climate change was real. The eruption was the cause. The connection between China, Egypt, and Greece is not coincidence. It is causation. A single eruption in the Aegean Sea created atmospheric conditions that affected the entire eastern Mediterranean, extended to Egypt, and reached China. The ash traveled thousands of kilometers. The cooling affected crops across continents. The famine spread across empires. The ice cores from Greenland show a sulfate spike at 1644 plus 20 BC, initially hypothesized to be Santorini, but independent studies from 2003 showed that the ash was not from Santorini. The source was Mount Aniakchak in Alaska. The chronology was revised. Aniakchak erupted in 1628 BC, but the Santorini eruption still happened. The radiocarbon dating of olive trees buried alive in the pumice layer shows 1627 to 1600 BC with 95% probability. The wiggle matching of the olive tree confirms 1627 to 1600 BC. The 28 samples from the volcanic destruction layer show 1664 to 1614 BC. The science is clear. The volcanic winter lasted for years. The ash blocked the sun, The crops failed, the famines spread, the empires collapsed, the Xia Dynasty fell, the Shang Dynasty rose, the Minoan civilization weakened, the Mycenaeans conquered, the climate changed, the world changed. This was not just a geological event. This was a historical turning point. A single eruption connected 3 continents in a single catastrophe. The ash from Santorini fell in China, the cooling affected Egypt, the tsunamis destroyed Crete, the famine spread across the Mediterranean, the empires collapsed, the civilizations changed. The evidence exists in archaeology, in geology, in ice cores, in tree rings, in ancient records. The science is clear. The eruption happened, the climate changed, the world was affected, and the question remains, what if it happens again? After 3,600 years, the mega disaster of Santorini is now factually proven. Not as a theory, not as a hypothesis, but as confirmed scientific reality through multiple independent lines of evidence. The explosion happened, the tsunamis happened, the climate change happened, the civilization collapse happened. All of it is proven. The geological evidence is direct and undeniable. 60 meters of white tephra covers the soil before the eruption, clearly delineating the exact level of the land before the cataclysm. The tephra has 3 distinct bands indicating different phases of the eruption. The caldera collapsed completely, transforming the circular island into a half-moon shape. The modern archipelago of Santorini consists of 3 volcanic islands, Thera, Therasia, and Akrotiri, forming the circle, with Nea Kameni and Palaya Kameni in the center over the caldera. The geography itself proves the explosion. The radiocarbon dating is multiple and independent. Olive trees buried alive in the pumice layer date to 1627 to 1600 BC with 95% probability. The INT-Cal 20 curve from 2018 onwards shows 1610 to 1510 BC with 95.4% probability. Wiggle matching of the olive tree confirms 1627 to 1600 BC. 28 samples from the volcanic destruction layer date to 1664 to 1614 BC. Seeds from Akrotiri date to 1646 to 1606 BC with 95% probability. The data converges. The tree ring evidence spans continents. In 1629 to 1628 BC, events are recorded in North American trees. In 1628 BC, depression appears in Irish oaks and Swedish pines. In 1627 BC, frost rings appear in Swedish pines and Irish oaks. Minimum growth years are 1654, 1649, 1619, 1597, 1546, and 1524 BC. Sulfur and calcium increases appear in Mediterranean tree rings between 1681 and 1673 BC. The climate data is global and consistent. The archaeological evidence is the most visible. Akrotiri, the 20-hectare city, was excavated for 40 years, revealing only 2 hectares. The city is perfectly preserved under 60 meters of ash, like Pompeii, but no human remains were found. The population evacuated before the eruption. The buildings are intact, 3-story structures, elaborate drainage systems, magnificent frescoes of antelopes, boxing boys, blue monkeys, and flying fish. The city was a ghost town before the explosion. The tsunami deposits are confirmed globally. 4 wave landfalls occurred at Cesme Balararasa over days or weeks. Field evidence at Pallaicastro confirms waves of at least 9 meters. Geoarchaeological tsunami deposits exist worldwide. The science is clear. The tsunamis happened. The ancient historical records connect the events. The storm Stele of Ahmose I in Egypt describes catastrophic storms. The bamboo Annals in China record yellow mist, frost in July, and famine. The Chronicle of Paros from 1582 BC describes the deluge of Deucalion, possibly based on the eruption. The Titanomachy in Hesiod's Theogonia may be inspired by the eruption. The records are not coincidences. They are the same event. The oceanographic studies from 2015 to 2019 analyzed marine sediments and seismic data. They confirmed the volume, 28 to 41 cubic kilometers of dense rock equivalent. They identified the 4 eruptive phases with specific volumes. They mapped the underwater deposits. The evidence is overwhelming. The tephra from Santorini serves as a horizon marker in almost every archaeological site in the eastern Mediterranean. Pumice from Tel El Daba in Egypt, dated to 1540 BC, has composition matching Thera. The ash connects the sites. The dating converges. This documentary is based on evidence from archaeology, geology, multiple independent scientific datings, and ancient historical records that factually prove this VEI-7 megadisaster. After 3,600 years, Santorini continues to be studied as one of the greatest geological catastrophes in human history. The explosion happened, the tsunamis happened, the climate change happened, the civilization collapse happened. All of it is proven. The question remains, what if it happens again? Santorini is still active. The volcano causes catastrophes every 20,000 years for Plinian eruptions. It is classified as a decade volcano, studied for future disaster preparation. Seismic activity intensified in February 2025, though geologists say it is tectonic, not volcanic. But the volcano remains, the magma chamber remains, the potential remains. The megadisaster of Santorini in 1646 BC changed the world. It connected China, Egypt, and Greece in a single catastrophe. It collapsed empires. It weakened civilizations. It changed the climate. It destroyed an island. It generated tsunamis of 150 meters. It ejected 60 cubic kilometers of rock. It pierced the stratosphere with a 36-kilometer column. It was heard 3,000 kilometers away. This is the story of the greatest geological megadisaster of the ancient world, and now you have heard it.